Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, after listening to the contribution by the member for Lopino-Bonaire West, I could not help but be reminded by one of David Rudder's prolific songs called A Madman's Rant. Because, Mr. Deputy Speaker, all you heard about was the PNM coulda, the PNM woulda, the PNM shoulda. But after 9 years, absolutely no delivery. The member for Lopino-Bonaire West spoke at great lengths, telling us what was the legacy of the UNC in the water sector. I want to tell the ministers from Toko to the same Cedros and Icarcus that you just spoke about that do not have water in their pipes across the length and breadth of this country today. That is the same people who are protesting for the basic commodities that they have not had in the weeks and in months because of the incompetence of you and your government. Mr. Deputy Speaker, after listening to the honourable member spoke about the UNC likes to speak about that we provided water 24/7 supply 70% of the country. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to remind the honourable member for Lopino-Bonaire West that it was a joint select committee of this parliament that in 2023, February of 2023, that WASA appeared and told the country that under People's National Movement for over the past 8 years, the 24/7 supply of water in Trinidad and Tobago under your administration after 8 years is an abysmal 16%, Mr. Deputy Speaker. At a joint select committee of the parliament, those who are not my words, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that is not words of the United National Congress. It was words coming from the mouths of the CEO and executive members who appeared before that joint select committee. So when you want to speak about failure, speak about the fact that you have been in government for the past 8 to 9 years. And 16%, 1/6, that is your legacy in terms of the water sector in this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member is shouting across the floor, not true, not true, not true. That is on the record of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in a joint select committee. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you know, I understand the confusion with the honourable member because it was just a few days ago that Trinidad and Tobago woke up to a Trinidad Express article that said Gonzales contradiction. And they were referring to the Honourable Minister of Public Utilities. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is what that article had to say. Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzales has delivered a statement that contradicts what he said about the amount of water state provider WASA is losing through leaks. WASA is one of the utility providers under his purview. Gonzales sought to disparage last week's Sunday Express editorial titled Drowning in Dry Taps and Potholes. And the dry taps and potholes is what could be found under this People's National Movement administration in this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But let me remind the honourable member that it was in that article it said, it is with some measure of concern and a fair amount of disappointment that I noted an editorial in last Sunday's Express newspaper that sought to misrepresent the facts. This is the minister. The minister said, I would like to make it clear that I am not in any way seeking to hinder the media as it goes out a mission of informing the general public. Citing Benjamin Franklin, Gonzales stated that half a truth is often a great lie. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is what the Trinidad Express had to say. 50% loss noted 3 times. However, it was Gonzales himself who, while reading from a prepared speech last year at the Caribbean Regional Water Loss Conference in Hilton, Trinidad and Conference Centre, St. Anne, stated that according to the latest estimates, as much as 50% of this country's water is lost somewhere between its production and the end user. That figure was mentioned by Gonzales at least 3 times in the space of 2 minutes, the article says. There's a video evidence to support this that the minister provided. During his address on March 23rd at the first ever specialized water loss conference in the Caribbean, a recording of which is still posted on state-owned TTT's Facebook page, outlining Gonzales' contradiction, outlining the challenges facing the region. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, when the honourable member comes today to speak to the House and tell the House all that is happening in the water sector, the minister could not even get it right. And from a prepared speech, Mr. Deputy Speaker, not on one occasion, not on 2 occasions, but 3 occasions. And I took the Trinidad Express editorial to point out the inconsistencies and the contradictions of the honourable member that has now become a feature in the public domain, particularly when you reflect of what happened in this very house with the TSCT cyber attack, where the minister didn't know if he was going or if he was coming. And today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, today that is a true reflection of what was adopted by the minister then. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the honourable member spoke about desalinated water and spoke about the UNC introducing desalinated water. We are proud that we introduced desalinated water in this country. When we introduced desalinated water under the Pandey administration, it was meant for the commercial sector, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It was never meant to provide water on the residential sector, on the residential lines. And therefore, when those negotiations took place under this desalinated contract, meant for the commercial sector, it was at commercial rates that it was negotiated under the Pandey administration. But again, the minister only tells you piece of the story because it's convenient for the minister to convolute in the public domain how we ended up in the situation that we are in today with desalinated water in this country. And I will tell you how we ended up in the situation we are in today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with respect to desalination water. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the records will show that during the period 1997 to 2000, there were large swaths of this country, Caroni Central, Caroni East, Chaguanas East, Chaguanas West, Couva South, Couva North. For months and weeks, they were without water. And that was because of the low production levels at the Caroni Water Treatment Plant, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It was the vision of Bastille Pandey, the same Bastille Pandey that they sang and they praised just a few weeks ago, that they are demonizing today under the issue of the water and in the desalinated contracts, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But it was under Mr. Pandey's administration that desalcut was brought in to add water to the commercial grid, so that water that was being taken out from the Caroni Water Treatment Plant going onto the commercial grid, that water will be saved and will be sent only on the domestic and the residential grid, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the reason today that Trinidad and Tobago pays commercial rates to the Salcott for the salinated water that is going to residential lines is because of the negotiations that the PNM under Patrick Manning administration followed by a Rowley administration has us in that situation today, Mr. Deputy Speaker. That is what has us in the situation with respect to the Salcott today. They renegotiated the terms and conditions of the Salcott's contract, Mr. Deputy Speaker, keeping water that was meant for the commercial grid at commercial rates, bringing it on to the domestic grid, because they weren't able to provide this country with additional catchments and additional production levels of water to be placed on the domestic grid. So therefore, they took the water from the Salcott in order to satisfy the needs of the constituencies that I aforementioned, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, all you are seeing happening today is the challenges that Couva South, Couva North, Caroni Central, Caroni East, Pointe-a-Pierre, my colleague from Chaguanas East, Chaguanas West, the challenges that they faced in that Pandey administration during that era of geographic neglect, you are now seeing that manifesting itself in several other parts of this country, that today even their own constituencies, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because of their incompetence, 9 years later, they have been unable to deliver projects. The minister spoke about dams. After 9 years, you could only speak about 3 dams in Freeport. Right now in Freeport, Mr. Deputy Speaker, WASA is moving a booster station that would assist in the central region to La Brea. So when we speak about geographic discrimination, instead of saying, well, what is located in Caroni Central, in Freeport, one like that is needed in La Brea, what they're doing, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is they're taking the resources from areas where it is much needed to place into other areas. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's into constituencies that they have held for 40 and 50 years. And that is why when I stand in this parliament and I remind members, there are some constituencies who have voted nothing but PNM and look at the condition for water, for basic commodities in this country today. And they are proud. They are proud that that is the legacy of squalor and neglect that they have kept their own constituents in. And therefore, when I speak to constituents in Princestown and Naparima, in my own areas, I tell them, listen, they have been in power for more than 50 years, and look at the condition they have kept Laventille and Diego Martin in. You think they're coming to fix Princestown and they're coming to fix Naparima, Mr. Deputy Speaker? Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is that neglect and that taking for granted that today the minister could not give us a comprehensive outline of where these 47 water projects that you promised. Because up to now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, up to now, there are many parts of this country, including my own constituency in Penal, Davie, in Separia, in Urupuch West in particular, my colleague, who year after year, I often feel very sorry for him because he has one of those constituencies that faces severe flooding. And while other countries are utilizing catchment areas where there is severe flooding to increase the production of water through dams and reservoirs and catchment ponds and so on, that misses the member for Lopino Bonnet completely. The Minister of Public Utilities has now a track record, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of distancing himself from WASA, TSCT, and TNTEC with the hope that the problems will go away because he does not have the competency or the testicular fortitude to deal with the challenges in those companies, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when the member for Lopino Bonnet tells us about the restructuring of WASA, today we are dealing with development loans inside of the state sector. And one of the reiterations in the motion, Mr. Deputy Speaker, speaks about state enterprises and state entities that fall under the purview of ministers and ministries. And therefore it falls squarely in the domain of WASA, TNTEC, and TSCT if we were to look at public utilities, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Not one word. For the past 2.5 years, all we heard from this Minister of Public Utilities is a panacea to the issues that are affecting WASA has to do with the restructuring of WASA. And therefore, one would have thought today you're coming to ask for $10 billion. $10 billion at a time when almost 50%, if not more, of citizens cannot get water in a timely manner in their taps, in their homes, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But the minister could not identify, telling me across the floor he only had 10 minutes. Who restricted the minister? I didn't restrict the minister. The member for Separia didn't restrict the minister. As far as I know, the Deputy Speaker did not restrict the minister. The minister had 45 minutes to stand up and account to the population and say, well, this is where we are going in terms of the water projects. These are the levels and the reservoirs and dams. Not a word. Instead, what the minister engaged in was bacchanal and lacqueray, because that is the hallmark of a People's National Movement government. Whether they are in election mode or whether they are not in election mode, that is their fallback position, because they do not have answers to the population in terms of the projects that are needed in communities and in constituencies. They cannot tell us what are the challenges that are currently occurring at these dams, what are you doing about it. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what about the infrastructural challenges? And the Minister of Public Utilities, 2 years ago, March 2021, told the population that the panacea to the issues affecting WASA and being able to put water in the pipe 24/7 in all the constituencies across the length and breadth of this country was what? A water modulated plant. The minister promised 10, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8, not 9, but 10. And in the same breath, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in the same breath of March 2021, and it is on the public record, the minister said that the first one will be delivered in October of 2021 in central Trinidad. My colleague from Couva South, Couva North, Chaguanas East, Chaguanas West, Caroni Central, Caroni East could tell you that there's no water modulated treatment plant in any of the central constituencies because none exist, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But when the minister then spoke, the minister said, like development loans like which we are dealing with today, would address the issue of what? Water modulated plants. Since then, we have heard nothing. Did the minister come today, the member for Lopino Bonnier West, stand in this house and tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago, listen, I understand what your challenges are. I have been there for almost 4.5 years. We have been in government successfully for the past almost 9 years. We know what the challenges are. You know, my friend, my colleague from Tabakit always tells us, she says, they will come and tell us, I know what the problem is, you know. I know what the problem is, you know. I know what the problem is, you know. But they will do nothing to fix the problem, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So 9 years later, we are still in the same position because I want to remind Trinidad and Tobago, while the member talks about the legacy of the UNC, the water sector, and we boast that, yes, we delivered 70% of this country received water in a 24/7 supply of water under the UNC and under the People's Partnership. I want to remind the member that is every time we have a People's National Movement administration, water remains one of the most severe challenges. The member for San Fernando East would recall that one of his predecessors, his own father, Mr. Deputy Speaker, one of the reasons they were voted out in 2010 was the large swaths of this country was without water. And the same promise of that administration then, between 2002 to 2010, and right where we are today, from 2015 to 2024, going into 2025, it was the same promise of what? These water modulated plants. Mr. Deputy Speaker, one would have thought that the responsible thing for the member for Lupino Bonnier West to come and do today is to tell us, where are we when you made this promise? What are the challenges that you're facing? Because it was not the member for Siparia that the member stood up here trying to chastise poorly and pathetically, but it was the member himself who had the opportunity to tell the country, listen, these water modulated plants I told you all about in March of 2021, this is where we are right now. These are the challenges. I have not been able to deliver the first plant that I told you would come on stream in October of 2021. But these are the challenges, and this is how we are going to fix it. And the loans that we are proving here today will assist in fixing those challenges. No, the member was not interested in that because the member is not interested in helping people in this country. The member's intent is to create bacchanal and hysteria in the build-up for a general election, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, people in this country, you know, it's often said, you can fool me for as long as you want. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sorry, you can fool me once, twice, 3 times, but not for as long as you want. And, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm hopeful that the member will find it as part of his responsibility, if not today, because he missed this golden opportunity to tell us how these development loans will put water in the pipes of our nation's citizens. He come to tell us, the honourable member that is, about the member for Siparia and former Minister Ganga Singh and so on. I want to tell the honourable minister, you could jump high, you could jump low. You could drink this, you could drink that. At the end of the day, both the Pandey administration and the Kamla Prasad Bisesa administration were known as administrations that delivered on water to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And what people are interested in is not your bacchanal and your hysteria and your lacareno. People are not interested about who pipe and who don't have pipe and where pipe drop and where pipe didn't drop, you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker. People are more interested in to know what is inside of the pipe because they're not receiving it today. They're not receiving water. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I recall being put out of this parliament. Being put out of this parliament for raising my own constituency. The member for Tabakit will tell you because we border constituencies where there are schools. Yes. Schools that are sent home from time to time early. Why? Because they do not have water, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And that continues up to today. But I'm not surprised, you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm not surprised because it was this very member for Tabaki who came and told us that parts of Gasparilla Secondary School were falling down. The Minister of Education got up and told us that is not true and put on 7 o'clock news any night. It shows you on the CNC3 news parts of Gasparilla Secondary School falling down. They are not in touch with what is happening on the ground, what is happening in the constituencies. And listen, I understand that you are in campaign mode. I understand you are in election mode. I understand you have to make people feel things are happening even though we know it is not happening. But at least make the effort to bring about. The member for Urupuch West spoke about it. People are interested in the quality of their life and the basic things in this country. That this development loan would bring about change in, Mr. Deputy Speaker, has to do with the public utilities sector. Mr. Deputy Speaker, one of the other things I wanted to raise, when the member spoke, not here today, but one would have thought that it would have been an important area for him to address, the honourable member, that is, the restructuring of WASA would bring about change in terms of the organizational structure, the operations of the company, and the way going forward in terms of bringing more relief to citizens. But it was in this very parliament during the Standing Finance Committee that I raised that on the books of WASA you were seeing that almost $60 million there were cuts in the NIS. And I asked the member, I said, member, does this then indicate, and very flippantly the member says, yes, it means that possibly people will be going home. And that was headline news. It had the whole country in a pandemonium for a week because of the lack of information the member provided. But more importantly, the confirmation the Minister of Public Utilities gave that employees at WASA were going home. And today I want to ask, because I think both the member for Urupuch West and the member for Siparia has cleared up the misinformation made by the member for Diego Martin North. He said these loans cannot be used. Obviously, yes, we do know it can be used through a supplementation. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is often said the devil is in the details. And you know, during the budget debate, it really did escape me when I did not see that 60 million cut when we were doing the debate. It was really in the Standing Finance. And I kept hammering at the minister. I said, Minister, tell us, give us some more information. How are you going to take $60 million off the books of WASA, and confirming that you are sending people home? There's a possibility of that. But then at the same time, from the next side of your mouth saying, well, we'll see what we can do to keep people and so on. I'm asking frontally today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that can we expect in the very near future, when the mid-year review comes, that we see in the development loans that employees at WASA will be offered VSEP and the payments will come through these development loans, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I want the Honourable Minister to answer that, because the Honourable Minister has not been able to say how you are going to supplement without the supplementation, possibly that is to come with the mid-year review, where you're getting the $60 million from. And unless you are borrowing money from another vote, you owe the people of Trinidad and Tobago an explanation in terms of whether or not any of this will be used for VSEP for WASA employees. How many WASA employees do you intend to retrench, Mr. Deputy Speaker? It was in this House the Minister gave the confirmation, and I heard the member for Diego Martin North speak about this 3.2% of unemployment in this country. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is a great hoax. What is happening across ministries and state enterprises, and you will see it in every budget document, that under the line item of contract employment, there are huge cuts, huge slashes to contract employment. Just this year for WASA alone, $250 million. The year before was $350 million. $550 million cut in contract employment in WASA. But when you look at the Ministry of Education and you look at the Ministry of Public Utilities, you look at the Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Health, etc., under the area of contract employment, what you will see happen, and this has to do with the point that the Minister of Finance made, member for Diego Martin Northeast, that when you see 3.2 and the minister is boasting 3.2 is the unemployment rate. What has happened that they are able to keep people in jobs in the state sector and they have not sent home public servants? The great hoax, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that when you look at the line item under contract employment, a lot of these contractual positions, they are not renewing the positions. And therefore, what is happening is that a lot of these contract officers are in fact going home. They're going home, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and therefore the real numbers are not reflected on the books in terms of how much people have actually lost their jobs in the public sector. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, we will file the requisite freedom of information. I know the member for Barataria San Juan has been working on that, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, another area has to do with the National Water Transformation Program.
Honourable Member, before you go on to your next point, you just have about 3 more minutes of your initial speaking time, but you have an additional 15. You care to avail yourself?
Yes, sir.
Proceed.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the National Water Transformation Program. Again, not one word from the member for Lopino Bonaire West, the Minister for Public Utilities, on the National Water Transformation Program. What has become of this program, Mr. Deputy Speaker? Apart from the 10 modulated plans, we wanted to hear today about these development loans. How are you going to increase the capacity of additional catchment areas for water production, Mr. Deputy Speaker? I spoke about the fact that in San Francisco, is it in your the member for Urupuch West, that every single year 5 and 6 feet of water. I remember one year the Prime Minister went down there, and I said in this very house, the Prime Minister went down there swinging his hand, not a tin of cricks, not a tin of sardine, not a pan at all for people. Went to Papi, show the people up to today, San Francisco, Separia, Pinal, Debe, areas that did not see flooding between the period 2010 to 2015 because we were doing the work to desilt those rivers, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and put infrastructural projects that will mitigate against flooding. Those projects have been totally abandoned, and that did not just work on its own, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It worked in tandem with the government at that time, utilizing the runoff water in the National Water Transformation Program. Absolutely nothing from the honourable member on this issue, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the honourable member told us nothing about the projects that were started in many of these areas. They are incomplete projects. I know in my own constituency. And I remember there was a Minister of Public Utilities during the period 2018 to 2019. Minister Robert Lehunt, standing in this very parliament, told the country that Tableland, who did not receive water for over 6 to 7 weeks, the member for Moruga Tableland and I share the border for the Tableland area in the country, Mr. Deputy Speaker. If you're going into Tableland, I'm on the left hand. The member for Moruga Tableland is on the right hand with Mantacool and several other areas there. I remember I took the member for Moruga Tableland. She was not MP then, but she was doing the work of an absent MP at that time. Doing the work, hard-working, going in there, being a voice for the people inside of there. Because there were parts of Manticool, etc., that the PNM don't go into there. Michelle, the member from Moruga Tableland, will tell you. Why? Because if the PNM get 1 vote inside of Manticool and so on, they get plenty. So they don't go in there. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, from Rio Claro all the way to Princestown, for months, Tableland didn't get water. And it was Minister Lehunt who stood in this house in an answer to a question to me, told me, he said we are allocating $20 million for a mega project because the pipelines in there need restoring because the water cannot climb the hills from the dam. Minister Lehunt came, Minister Lehunt left. In came Minister Marvin Gonzalez in 2020. I filed the very same question. I asked Minister Lehunt. I asked this new minister. I asked the question in 2020. I asked the question in 2021. I asked it in 2022. The exact same question I asked Lehunt. And you know what was the answer? I don't know what you're talking about, Princestown. We never promised any project. And it is on the Hansard, and there are many unfinished projects in areas of Rio Claro, Mayaro, Moruga Tableland, Princestown, Naparima. that these constituencies that are usually considered rural constituencies that depend on surface runoff water. You know, one of the projects in the budget that they just passed, and we made a big song and dance about it, because we found in the 21st century, you are now talking about barrels and buckets, and I saw the news, they carried a headline, Padarath and Gonzalez fight over barrels and buckets. But the issue that I was making heavy off, Mr. Deputy Speaker, had to do, we were in the 21st century. We are in the 21st century when we were telling you that you needed, yes, short-term measures, but you also needed long-term measures. And what were the long-term measures? The infrastructural projects. What would have been nice today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is to hear the member for Lopino Bonner West, the Minister for Public Utilities, tell us the infrastructural projects that would have been completed, that was already started. Some places 50, 60, 70%. But you also saw that just last week when a member for Tabikit spoke about the incomplete schools. Today I'm telling you about the incomplete infrastructural projects in the area of public utilities for something as simple as water in this country. So when the minister gets up and he contradicts himself, whether it's inside of Parliament or outside of the Parliament, and the Trinidad Express, not me, the Trinidad Express editorial has to point out to the minister, you don't know if you're coming or you're going. You might very well expect another editorial come this Sunday telling you that you should have used your 10 minutes to talk about the incomplete projects and the projects that would bring relief to the people of Trinidad. Yes. That is what people want to hear. People are tired and fed up of your mama guy, your old talk, your rhetoric about what jacket I have on, about the member for Couva North and the member for Point Area. People don't care about it when they do not have basic commodities. And let me tell you, that strategy is not going to work. People are interested about what it affects their pockets and what affects their homes. That is what they want to hear from you. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, $10 billion, nothing in public utilities, nothing in social development, nothing in health, nothing in education, the critical areas that are needed to hold up this country and say to the country, we are moving forward. Nothing, absolutely nothing to add value to the quality of life in terms of basic amenities and commodities. Institutions in this country, education institutions, places of employment, ministries where people are complaining about the service. Like yesterday, the whole Ministry of Finance collapsed upon itself. And the minister stands up in the Parliament today and says, and he throws the blame on public servants. Throws the blame on public servants, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But the ministry has collapsed upon itself. And the member for Oropuchi West will tell you that is not the first time you have seen blunder after blunder. And they want to talk about scandal and blunder in the People's Partnership, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But this government has become notorious, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for inaction, for ineptitude and incompetence across the board. Their own supporters, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in their last year of being in government, preceding our 2025 general election or before, their own members, their own supporters don't even have confidence that they can deliver to them in programs. In regional corporations that the UNC is in the minority. Corporation workers are begging you to raise issues that they cannot get toilet paper, they can't get water, they can't get pen, they can't get paper. And this is happening at a regional corporation level. And the members can stoop as loud and how much they want. That is not going to change the fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker. That is not going to change the fact. That is not going to change the fact when people cannot get garbage picked up in front of their homes. That does not change the fact when people have to resort to stealing milk from a supermarket because they cannot provide for their children. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the modus operandi of this government, and today I almost felt sorry for them because it was a lost opportunity to tell the population what they wanted to hear about. To say to the population, listen, we have had our challenges like any other administration, but we have made progress. But as the member for Tabigit always tells us, them can't talk progress. What progress them go talk about? Right? It is spite and bad mind that has them where they are today. Because many of the projects that were on stream between 2010 to 2015, they chose to cut the projects, Mr. Speaker. Start afresh, and in many instances, they have started what? Nothing. Nothing, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So when the member stands up in this house and tells us, well, the PNM will do this, and the PNM will do that, and the PNM will give you this, and the PNM will give you that, they have done nothing for you, they have given you nothing, and they will continue to give you nothing, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So therefore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you see these development loans that we are dealing with today?
Nothing.
You know, I remember it was in the local government election. People came and they said, well, we were campaigning. They said, boy, you know, they're in Shogunas East.
Where?
And they're giving out hamper and they're giving out grant. And right now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, all of that is happening for the general as well. Because they've already started, and I think Shogunas East has dealt with the pink poodle comprehensively. I think the member from Maruga Tableland will take them on, regardless of who it is they send inside of there. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I told people, you know, coming and they're expressing their concerns and so on, I said, listen, they've been in government for 9 years. They had all the state resources at their disposal. They will come for increases in these development loans. But the issue that this government has always had from day one is implementation. They cannot implement. They are unable to use the resources that they have to bring about relief to the everyday man, woman, and child in this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think from the leader of the opposition to my colleague from Uruput West, to all my colleagues who spoke, it is a clear indication that we're going nowhere fast with this $10 billion in development loans. This is just another talk shop. They will throw money after the different sectors with the hope that will help them for a general election. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think that the contribution of the member for Lupino Bonaire West put it in a nutshell for the PNM, which is they coulda, woulda, shoulda, but delivered nothing, because that will continue to happen over the next year, hoping to fool and mamagai the population, but the population has awoken from their slumber, because now it has reached their homes with property tax, at the verge of losing their homes, but now it has also reached their pockets, where they are unable to meet the basic essentials in terms of supermarket, in terms of meeting their bills and so on, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, with those words, I thank you, and I thank the colleagues for the opportunity to speak here today.